Watch and burn.
Hey everybody. So tonight I want to discuss the 2008 film, Rachel Getting Married. I love movies like this because I like these sort of more quiet slice of life type films from time to time. This movie is quiet. There is so much going on, and yet this movie is so easy. It is about the main character is a girl by the name of Kim, and she's in rehab for her drug problems, and she takes the weekend off rehab to come to her sister Rachel's wedding, because after all, the movie's called Rachel Getting Married. Now, I don't want to, I guess the only joke I'll make about this movie is that the spoiler is that Rachel gets married at the end and the movie ends. Ha ha ha. But yeah, this isn't exactly the funniest movie. This movie isn't wrapped up in endless tragedy after tragedy, but this movie is anchored around Anne Hathaway's character, Kim. When she was a teenager, she was high on pills, I think it was, if memory serves. And she took her little brother out, and they hung out all day, and everything was fine. And then they were driving home. She lost control of the car, and she went off a bridge, and she wasn't able to get his car seat undone in time, and he drowned. And she was found to be intoxicated. So, yeah. Now, the interesting thing about that is never once throughout the course of this film are the drugs directly blamed for the accident. Anne Hathaway, Kim, frames it as she lost control of the car. That can happen to anybody, sober or drunk or whatever, or all banged up on pills. It doesn't matter. It can happen to anyone. And she was with her younger brother all day. They went and they did things, and she was fine. And according to her mother, she said like she was so good with her brother. And so I don't even know if the drugs were directly to blame, but I suppose the bottom line is you just shouldn't be driving while under the influence of anything, and you definitely shouldn't be driving when you have a kid in the car with you if you're under the influence of anything. But I did find it interesting that the movie didn't directly draw a direct correlation between drug use and the loss of her brother. I thought that was sort of an interesting layer to sort of toss in here. This absolutely destroyed her father. I mean, that was like one of the saddest things, is watching her father try to keep it all together when he knows that like Rachel doesn't necessarily want Kim there, and Kim doesn't necessarily want to be around Rachel's sort of more together life and Rachel's friends, and everything's very awkward. And of course, losing her younger brother destroyed her parents' marriage. Her mother's moved on. I believe she's remarried, but her father just seems to be out to sea, and he's just sort of drifting. And at the end of the movie, when Rachel's leaving, she sees her father. As she's walking out, she's looking through the bay window in the living room, and she sees her dad in there sort of scattered looking, and she says, "Dad?" like really sad. And then she walks off and gets back in the car and goes back to rehab. And I'm not entirely sure why she did that. I don't know if I'll ever be sure why she did that. I think she knows the damage she did to her father was colossal. I mean, I feel awful for everybody in this, okay? Kim is kind of a nightmare. I mean, whether or not she had killed her younger brother, I think the character of Kim, she would have been a nightmare no matter what. And that fucking speech she gives at the night before the dinner, the night before the wedding. I mean, no one's going to find like rehab and parole jokes funny, especially considering that I don't even think Kim had met her sister's fiance or his family prior to right now. So I just don't know about that speech. Her giving at the dinner table was a wise choice, socially speaking, especially considering that everybody's most likely going to be on the fence about meeting the girl that they know is responsible for killing her younger brother while she was all banged up on pills. I think Kim should have probably employed a little more tact. But Kim does sort of strike me, like I said, as sort of being the reckless sort of train wreck type. And I mean, I did find, like, when Rachel, for example, though Rachel was far from perfect too, because when her and Kim were sort of battling it out, and it looked like the argument wasn't going Rachel's way, Rachel just throws in that she's pregnant, and it just shuts down everything her and Kim were attempting to get to the root of. And even Kim points it out. She's like, well, that was completely uncalled for. She throws in this massive thing, like, dude, I'm pregnant, and nobody knew. And she just kind of throws that in, and I thought that was kind of rude of Rachel, but I understand where Rachel's coming from because Kim seems like a bit of a train wreck, and she killed her younger brother, so from time to time she gets very angry at her. So I get it, but I still felt her tossing the pregnancy in at that point was a little uncalled for. I love Jonathan Demme's, his direction seemed so effortless here. This feels like, I think this and Silence of the Lambs are my two favorite Jonathan Demme films. And what I loved about this was he sort of employed the old what Billy Friedkin did, with his camera people in French Connection. There were no established shots. Everything was very loose. So this movie sort of has that documentary feel because he didn't tell his cinematographer / camera people where the next shot was going to be, so they just sort of had to capture the action as it happened, and it does give it a more authentic and sort of like a more genuinely like a documentary vibe, like I said, which I loved because it keeps the camera people on their toes, which makes this feel that much more real. And I thought, too, one of the nicest things about this was the shot of everybody, both families' hands on the wedding cake at the end when they're all cutting the initial piece. I thought that was an absolutely beautiful scene. And I love the end credits. After Kim is come and gone, you see Rachel watching her new husband from a distance, just hanging out, listening to the band that was playing at the wedding. And she's watching him watch them before she slowly makes her way over and joins them. I just thought that could not have been done better. I thought as far as like impactful end credits go, that would be right up there. Like, I love watching those sort of like, almost like a stalker cam, so to speak, of one of the characters just sort of living their life without the camera, without them knowing that the camera's there. So when Rachel's just watching her new husband exist and we're watching Rachel exist, I just thought that was such a comforting and quiet way to end a film that was tragic and yet uplifting and hopeful at the same time, because I think Kim's probably going to be okay, and everybody did still love her. It's just that type of trauma can't be undone, unfortunately. But yeah, so I think that is everything here. Oh yeah, the fight with her and her mom when she attempts to blame her mom for letting her take her brother out, and then when she slaps her mom. That was so heavy. And it reminded me of like that's like a classic Ingmar Bergman thing to do. And it was played so well. Jonathan Demme, like that looked like an old Bergman movie. And it was just such a nice nod. And I loved that as well. And again, now I'm done. So thank you so much for hanging out with me while I discussed the 2008 film, Rachel Getting Married. Like always, if you like this review, don't forget to do something nice for somebody. But most importantly, please don't forget that the world is actually a better place because you're in it. I'm getting out of here because this fucking scarf is making me hot. Have a good night.